Welcome to our another session, Expect the Unexpected, Navigating Commercial Real Estate Unscripted, especially in the 5 boroughs. And today I am joined by Peter Wilk. You know, he's an expert and he's also owner of the 5-Star Environmental. The company is located in Maspeth, New York City. Peter works basically hands-on, with asbestos, mold, lead, and environmental basic compliance. Things every property owner faces sooner or later. Many of them don't fully understand. So that's why I invited Peter, maybe just to give us a little explanation, go into details, because we're dealing. When we sell the building, when we buy the building, when we lease it, when we rent, all those issues come into the place. Maybe first question I'm going to ask you, why did you choose Maspeth? How did you get involved in this business?
Hi, Mark. Thank you for having me here. I'm very glad to be able to provide some information. Yeah, Maspeth, I used to live not exactly in Maspeth, but in Greenpoint, so it's actually next door. For many, many years, and I enjoy the place, and I know there's a big demand for environmental inspections, as they have all kind of things there. At this point, I moved out south to Queens, but I'm still serving Maspeth. But as a matter of fact, we serve the whole New York, 5 boroughs, New York State, because we are licensed in all these places. So inspections come with the licenses. You cannot do inspection in some places that you're not licensed for. We are licensed in 5 boroughs and pretty much, in New York State with all these subjects. So
this is why in whole state?
Yes, absolutely.
Whole state. Your license covers entire New York State.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, we don't want to travel to Buffalo, for example, right? But I know Westchester County, Nassau, Suffolk County, Staten Island, which is borough, we definitely cover. We also have some licenses for New Jersey, but again, that's a distance. We rather stay within New York City and New York State.
So, but why did you get into environmental from your personal experience? Because it's a very heavy subject. I'm always scared, of the chemicals on it.
Right. You know what? This is very true. We're talking about 3 decades of history. I started this as a construction worker 30 years ago, and my company was actually involved in the environmental contracts like abatements, mold, lead, asbestos. So they need somebody who can go and get the licenses. So I said, no, I don't mind learning, and I went to get my own licenses. Everything is licensed here. So that's how I started. After a couple of years with the company, I switched to actually a company where I also was an estimator for them for the environmental things. And then I actually switched after a couple of years to training people. Actually, I'm instructor licensed with all these subjects.
Really?
Yeah, I work for...
So you teach,
Not anymore, because it's too much time. But I was an instructor for probably 7 years in a vocational center, working full-time, training people with the hazmat, with the environmental issues like asbestos, mold, lead. I also was training people with OSHA safety. I'm also OSHA trainer, so I have all kind of licenses. I'm pretty much way too much, because it's
sometimes it can hurt you. Too much information.
But no, I think the good thing about this is actually I went through all the stages of this subject. So I started from the level of the pretty much abatement, supervising, estimation, training people, and now I'm a consultant and an inspector in all these subjects. So I think. There's not many things I don't know about this stuff. So that's one thing which I think is good about this.
And many people are, when they hear the environmental issues, they actually usually misunderstand, right? I'm gonna tell you the story. It's not pertaining to one time the owner called me. And I am real estate broker, as everybody knows, on it. And we run into so many different things, on a daily basis, And he called me that the tenant complained there was a mold in the building, and the tenant stopped paying immediately on it. And so he called. There was he tried to scrape. He did, but the tenant, what they did, I didn't know at that point. They called for some environmental company, and they did the testing. on the mold in the apartment. But lucky enough, there was a bogus claim on it. The testing didn't show mold on it. So that's the way actually I got involved, on that.
Yeah.
We're running into different scenarios on a daily basis. Maybe you can tell there's three different categories, right? Like asbestos, lead, and mostly mold, right? In the buildings.
Well, these are major subjects because you may have other things like radon, formaldehyde, chemicals, vapor, so biological contaminants. So there's many things. Pretty much, we used to cover most of them for last, I think, maybe 8 years, 6, maybe 7 years. We focus mainly on asbestos, mold, and lead because these give us so much work that we cannot, we don't want to expand beyond it. So we became experts with the asbestos, mold, and lead. Since you're talking about mold is all about water management or moisture management. So if you have a tenant that you have some water condensation because the insulation of the building of the walls is poor, then you may have a condensation issue. If you have a faulty roof or plumbing system, whenever you have a water issue, you will eventually get mold. So in your example, I believe there was like probably like early stage.
Maybe.
Because now if you wait longer with this...
there was some issue on the roof, and also in the bathroom, maybe there was something leaking, and he just covered.
And I tell you what, this example is actually very good example what's going on in the city, and we may have to make a different session about this.
Sure.
City violations.
I'd love to,
Right?
like dealing with the violations.
Yes, because that's a lot of administrative things, that you have to follow and go through if you get violation. So in your example, if that landlord received, if the tenant would call 311 number, and in New York City exactly there would be HPD, Housing Preservation Development, they would actually send inspector. And inspectors have a tendency to actually find things. Like, if they see some stain, they would say, what, it looks like mold, it is mold. They don't test it thoroughly. They pretty much kind of assume it. Or they look at this and say, no, we have to go with the worst case scenario. This is how they work. And they issue violation. And now this opens Pandora box. Because now you, as a landlord, you have to address it. You have to abate it. You have to send paperwork. You have to deal with the city, right? So So I think we should talk about this in more depth. At one point.
At one point that will be good, because every day there is a different issues, and you're dealing with constantly with something new. Right. Like many times when the buyer comes to us, they do inspection, First thing what they do inspection. And what happened, a lot of times on the inspection report, there is a possibility of the asbestos, possibility of the lead base, in the building, but the inspector doesn't tell you there is, but as he assumes there is asbestos, Many of them, if the potential buyer comes in, and we find a lot of times in a boiler room, I think back in the day, everything was asbestos, right? When they were insulating. What can you tell us about the boiler rooms?
Wow, that's a classic example. That's a classic example. As you mentioned, asbestos was pretty much phased out throughout the 80s, but still in the 90s,
they were using, right?
Yeah, because I mean, it's not completely banned anyways for the residential use. For the commercial use, they still have some allowances to use asbestos materials because they're good materials. For the residential use, they limited, but not totally banned yet. And the thing is now, still in the 90s, they used to use asbestos because it was supplied somehow. It was still leftover material. And why they use asbestos? First of all, because it has a great quality for like a thermal materials, thermal insulators. If you put asbestos material inside some other material, you increase the thermal insulation quality of that material. That's why all these boilers, right?
Boilers,
they need some thermal insulators, right? So anything on the boiler pretty much may contain asbestos. I mean, talking about like old boilers, not the new ones, right?
Yes. And you see, especially I see in many of the buildings, they have the pipes, and there's like a white thing around it, right? That's usually asbestos, right?
Looks like corrugated paper, kind of, right? But sometimes it looks like a putty, like a mud, kind of like a plaster. All these materials, if they're old, If they're old, you have to. They may contain asbestos, and pretty much so.
They may contain it.
They may. I mean, usually thermal system installation, I would say probably 80% of the time, they contain asbestos. The old materials, not the new ones. Like fiberglass does not contain asbestos, right? But if you look at something which was installed before the fiberglass was popular, you have to assume, because now if you're gonna disturb it, you're gonna contaminate the whole place. And we know asbestos is unhealthy, dangerous material. So
And you guys removed asbestos as well, right?
no, we used to.
But you have the company who can remove it. You can recommend,
We can give you a list of good contractors that
Good
in the
contractors.
field, because actually we as inspectors, I'm not supposed to recommend somebody for myself who does gonna do abatement, that there will be conflict of interest. So we don't do it. But again, we have a list of people, good contractors
good
in the field.
contractors who can do that. You see if there is asbestos in the building,
Yeah. Well, if you tell me, I have a roof and we want to abate the roof, this roof also contains asbestos, I can give you somebody, I can tell there's a list of people who specialize in roof abatements. If you tell me I have some, windows,
you can give the list of the people who do direct me to that. So asbestos, I think that's the main concern, but it's phasing out because a lot of new boilers come in.
Right.
People don't do that. And also, many times I see also the tiles, like a ceiling tiles in some of the apartments, or either there's flooring also. They did that as well. They use the asbestos, right?
Right. You know what? This is kind of crazy thing, because now when you do asbestos inspection, you have to assume that all materials pretty much contain asbestos, except like wood or metal or plastic, right? Obviously, but no. Like if you look at your studio right now, it's a renovated studio. But if you look at your ceiling tiles, they will have to be tested. I know that you probably installed them 5 years ago.
Yeah, recently.
Recently, right?
Yeah.
But technically, these materials have to be tested, because now we don't know unless you provide a date and some documentation. They don't contain asbestos, right? You probably don't have it, so I will have to test it. If I look at your walls, I'm not sure if this is drywall or plaster. They will have to be tested, right? So you can tell me, what, I installed this 2 years ago. That's okay. But if you want to have to apply for the construction permit, for example, a city will not allow you to provide documents where you bought this material from. They will say you have to get inspector report, test this drywall here, or maybe compound on it, right? Or if you have a plaster, old-fashioned material, this has to be also tested, right? If you want to replace your floor, these are new panels, right? But who knows what's below the panels, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to exaggerate the thing, but I want to make you aware that the method of inspection is very thorough and demanding, right? So if you are experienced like myself, I can direct you right way and tell you, what, don't do this or do this, or kind of be careful with it. So there's a big item of inspection. It's pretty much like a consultation, and I would say questionnaire, right? So this is how this works. So this is your studio, if you want to renovate it and you apply for the construction permit, you have to have asbestos inspection done here.
Okay, so what's usually inspection involved? You do the testing, you send it to the lab, or you pick up the samples, or how does it work? For example, if I have a boiler room, and I want to test it,
Yeah. Well, this is I would say probably 3-stage procedure.
3-stage, right?
Yeah, first of all, you have to have somebody certified to do it, So,
of course, I would.
Yeah, if you're a building owner, well, I'll tell you this: if you're a building owner and you live in the building and you don't rent it out, pretty much you can collect the samples unofficially but legally, submit to the lab and get the results and kind of for yourself, right? But if you're gonna go for if you need some kind of report or filing, or this is for like a third party, like for the tenants, or you want to sell the building, well, you have to get inspector like us, right? So I would have to go to the boiler, pretty much collect all asbestos suspect materials. So what's on the boiler? Some kind of insulation, piping insulation, some kind of gaskets, some kind of sealant, some kind of bridging material. So there's a bunch of things actually. They all have to be tested separately because they are called. There's a term homogeneous material. So actually, they have to be. They have to be. If you have not two identical materials, they have to be tested separately. We collect the samples. The bad thing about boilers, which I kind of don't like to do, but I still do it, you have to go inside the boiler.
You have to go inside the boiler?
Yeah, because now boilers have all kind of materials inside which contain asbestos. For example, interior insulations, refractory bricks, for example, some kind of cements, the old ones like stoves. So if you wanna, let's say you wanna remove this boiler, I have to make sure there's nothing inside the boiler. So now we have to shut off the boiler. We have to open it and look inside it.
Wow, it's very complex.
It is. The boilers are actually difficult. The old boilers are not easy to test, and this has to be actually planned and kind of there's a mechanical aspect there because we have to.
I've seen like big boilers in the big apartment buildings,
Yeah.
old ones, like round ones.
So
that's the ancient,
Yeah, they are, and and they were built with asbestos a lot because that was the best material back then to insulate them thermally. And so now, if you want to, let's say, remove it and just dispose it, well, you have to make sure there's nothing inside the boiler. So that's a tough case. So we have to think how we can get inside the boiler. So this is step one.
And step two?
Step?
Before we even go there, are they hazardous? Are they, what causes, they're bad for the health, right? Asbestos.
Well, absolutely no. It's pretty much airborne dust. Asbestos is a mineral. It's not man-made material. It's a mineral. It's like the same, like I would say, sand, cement. It's mineral. But the bad thing about asbestos, it comes in the fiber form. And it's pretty much microscopic fiber. So if we have a handful of asbestos material here, or asbestos as a mineral, and if we drop it here, we're gonna see some debris, but we're gonna have some microscopic fiber in the air, and they're gonna become airborne for a long time because actually our fiber pretty much travels very long days, and we're gonna inhale it, right? So once you inhale asbestos fiber, the body cannot cope with it.
Wow.
So this what causes scars, what causes down the road asbestosis. So it's a long-term effect, but definitely it's very unhealthy and dangerous to people. So you don't want to contaminate your place, for example, with asbestos fiber because you're going to be inhaling this asbestos fiber forever here. So maybe one example, which I think is a good example here, let's say you want to remove this wall, and this is made of asbestos material, like plaster. You say, no, I don't think it's asbestos, right? And you do construction here. Then, if this was asbestos, then now you contaminate your place, and pretty much you're going to have this asbestos fiber in this place forever.
Yeah. So, but if the asbestos is capsulated, does it affect, or you can still keep it? What's your
right? These are the what's called abatement methods. You don't have to remove this wall. Let's say this is plaster which contains asbestos. You say I'm not gonna remove it. What you can do, you can encapsulate it, which means like install like a protective film. Paint it over, for example, or there's special materials which are called encapsulants. And this way you prevent this fiber from being released. You can also enclose it. Let's say, what I'm going to do, I'm going to pretty much put new drywall on top of it. I'm going to kind of encase it and close it. That's not a legitimate method. But of course, the best method is to remove it, right? But you cannot remove it, you have to abate it. Yeah. And abatements are more expensive than kind of construction, demolition, right? Obviously.
This is we're just touching the surface. You can talk for hours regarding this, but like Peter, he's very thorough on the subject. He's been doing this for years, and he's an expert. But also, I'm running into another avenue, which is lead in a building. That's very common right now. The people do the testing. I think. There was a law, then you had to test all apartments, for lead. And like in today's shows, we're not giving any legal advice, This is only for the general information only, We're just talking,
Right.
And we have professionals like Peter. What can you tell us about the lead? I think that's a common right now. Right. Everybody is afraid,
Yeah, we cannot give you legal advice because it's the subject is very complex. It requires to have a lawyer to do it. But on the other hand, how many lawyers know so much? So usually, consulting would be a very good thing. If you have any question or you want to get some advice from consultant. But in your example, lead paint. Pretty much when we say lead, we mean mainly, or city means mainly lead paints. right? Because now, of course, you can look for the lead in water. You can look for lead in some plumbing materials, right?
You're right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, it's again vague, right?
Lead.
But mainly what we deal with, I would say probably 95% of the lead work we do is lead paint. City regulations, yes, New York City came up with this very demanding regulation in 2020, which is called Local Law 31. Local Law 31. This law said that during the 5 years, so actually started 2020 and expired on 2025. So actually,
this year.
This year, there's hope they're going to extend it. HPD, they talk about extension, but at this point, nothing official. But the law says that all buildings, all residential rental units in buildings built before 1960, why 1960, I'm going to tell you in a moment, they have to have a lead paint inspection. Plus, then they also added in a couple of years, I think 2023, they added a requirement that also common areas, so the corridor of the building would also have a report from the inspection. This is kind of quite demanding regulation because, first of all, if you're a landlord and you own 4-family building and you rent it out, now you have 4 apartments to be tested, plus you have a common area, right? So you need 5 reports. They're not inexpensive because now it takes so much time to test every paint, create the report, create the paperwork. So they cost a couple $100 per unit most of the time because this is so much, they kind of highly detailed, right? So that's one thing. And once you get the report, you have to keep this report and be aware of what you have. So this regulation, Local Law 31.
So you have to disclose it, right?
And you have to, 2 items. You have to be aware, you have to disclose it.
Wow. So
right?
I'm going to tell you, maybe it's not funny story, but as a broker, I have to, there's a seller, he has to identify. Usually there is a questionnaire. Do you have is there a lead in the building? Am I aware of it? And do you have any reports? So one time I had the seller, we were selling the building, and they checked off. They're not aware of any lead, and they haven't done any reports. Yeah. So the seller signed the contract, executed the deal. The buyer did it before. And we are about to close on the building, and the seller comes to me, you know what? I forgot to mention I did the reports. Lead-based paint reports. But the question the seller mentioned, I'm not aware of any reports, on it. And right now, we're going to the closing. We are about to close. And the buyer says, you lied, on it. You're hiding stuff from me on it. Why did you do that? And the seller said, I wasn't thinking that's irrelevant to it. I just realized that I did the report 3 years ago, and for one apartment. So, but we closed it. They offered discount on it and basically big money, but we finalize it. So this is very important, then you have to disclose those reports,
Right.
If you've done it, you have to keep it.
Well, I think this was intention of the city, of HPD, because they say, at this point from 2020 to 2025, we require inspections because now landlords will have to know, that will be aware if they have a lead paint in the building. So why is it important? First of all, for the tenants, don't expose anybody to lead paint. Or if you have lead paint, prevent exposure. So take care of it. And if you sell the building, now you cannot tell, I don't know, or I'm not aware of it because
you have the report.
Yeah, so I think this was the intention of the city, actually make everybody aware of it and speak about it. Yeah.
Testing on a lead-based paint, what usually, and I think also the city, that's what I heard, they changed the perimeters, used to be like a 1
action level, yeah.
Action level. So
level,
it's gonna test more, right? More apartments gonna be tested for that as a positive, for lead base.
Well, look at this. If I test this wall again, I like this wall somehow.
No, it's white.
Like the riches, right?
Yeah.
If I test this wall with something which is called XRF, there's a special equipment. There's only two brands of equipment that can be used for this purpose. They both call XRF. Very expensive because they work kind of like an X-ray, so they very high end technically gauges. And if I test this wall with this XRF, it's gonna give me a result how much lead is in the paint, right? So equipment which is used for this is called XRF. It's again the highly sophisticated gauge, and it's gonna give me result in milligrams per centimeter square. EPA standard says 1 unit, 1 milligram per centimeter square, and this is like a nationwide federal standard. But New York City is better on it.
Really?
It says no 0.5. No, so actually they have it. They used to have a 1.0. When they started this regulation, they started with 1.0.
So like usually nationwide, right?
Yeah,
Regulation.
they follow nationwide, the federal regulation. But now I think 2022, some additional, they say, no, we're going to go with the highest standard. We
got to be New York City. You know, we got to stand out on it.
What does it mean? No, if I come with this XRF to this wall again, and it shows me 0.9 milligram per centimeter square, 0.9 units. 4 years ago, there would be actually negative result. I would say, no, you have it, but no, it's not legally positive. Now, from 2022, this 0.9 would be actually positive. I would tell you, Marek, you have lead paint, legal lead paint in this wall. So 0.5, it's pretty much no, if you have 0.5, it's almost no lead there. You may not even have lead paint in the wall, and the instrument can show like 0.1, 0.2 because they have some error margin, right? But this is very strict regulation. Let's put it this way. It's very demanding.
Like a 0.5, you know.
Yeah. So if you go to a Home Depot and buy a new door, sometimes you can bring the door. It shows like 0.2. You're like, whoa, what's going on? But this may be error of the gauge. It's pretty much lead free. Yeah.
So and how do you treat it? If that stuff comes up,
Well, this is local law 31. We can briefly touch it.
Yeah, just because it's a very detailed subject. Maybe we can talk about it another time.
With a lot of coffee, and probably donuts, to talk about it because it's a big subject. I tell you what, local law 31. This is most important law in regards of lead paint these days, because every landlord who has a building built before 1960 and rented out, residential, not the commercial, residential, has to go through it. Right, so if we test the lead paint and we say this wall contains lead paint, legal level, you don't have to do anything because leads are not allowed only on the friction surfaces. And this where these things kind of goes through other regulations because local law 31 tells you only get the test, but refers you to the initial regulation which was called local law 1. And local law 1, which was enacted 2005, says that during the first vacancy of the apartment, all friction surfaces supposed to be abated from lead paint. So actually, this edge of the door right there, whatever wraps against each other, that was the friction surface. So not the entire door, but actually, the component which wraps against the door
framing,
frame. Exactly. Same thing with the windows.
Yeah. Window sills,
Yeah, window sash against the window frame. So these are friction surfaces. So if I test you. Well, it's not a rental unit, it's not residential, so you're exempt. But if this was like, let's say, pretend this is a studio that you rented out, I will have to test everything here, of course, whatever is painted. And I'll tell you, okay, this is positive, no problem, don't worry, just maintain it in good condition. This is local law 1. But if you have lead paint on the door, I would tell Marek, you have to go through official abatement. You have to hire EPA certified abatement contractor to abate it for you and give you certificate, proof of the abatement. So that's the process there, right? I can walk you through it, but that would take us probably
probably take an hour, but do you have to keep the records for how long usually?
Yeah. This is the whole point. You have to keep your records. Pretty much HPD, New York City HPD says for 10 years, right? We always say keep it forever because once you can keep it in the digital form. You don't have to have like a printout. Everything is digital, so you can keep it on your hard drive or in the cloud. But you keep your record for 10 years. But with local law 1, if you did some abatement or renovation, let's say in 2005, we're talking about 20 years. You still should have these documents, to show I did it, right? I'm in compliance with local law 1. So that's the other local. But yeah, keep your paperwork 10 years minimum.
Can you ever remove it from the abatement or apartment or not abatement from the keeping the records? Can you?
Yeah, actually, this is very important items here because you're talking about, I think, lead paint exemption.
Exemption.
Exemption, right? Now, another big subject, but again, to give you some heads up, with the exemption, if you have an apartment which is lead-free, totally lead-free, not cover lead paint with the drywall, but lead-free, then you can apply for the lead paint exemption with HPD. Very simple procedure, pretty much online. It costs nothing. They don't charge for this. And you can get lead paint exemption. And once you get lead exemption for a unit, this unit is pretty much exempted from lead regulations from the city. Very good thing to have, by the way. Plus, no, you as a broker, you would know if you provide this to the buyer, they would like it.
They would like it. That's usually done for the building built before 1960, right?
Yeah.
You have to
again, why is it 1960? Because lead paint was actually banned nationwide by EPA in 1978.
1978.
Yeah, so this is like a federal deadline. By now, actually, New York was ahead of time. They banned lead paint for the residential use in 1960.
Wow.
That's why our date in New York City, not the state, New York City, is 1960.
But state, that's a 1978.
And yes, and the whole United States is also.
So my question from your experience, when usually homeowners, they should do testing, if they want to sell it, if they want to lease it, when usually, what's your recommendation? What type of testing they should do?
Yeah. Well, at this point, I would say, hey, you're behind with it because now, the deadline for the XRF was August 9th. Again, we hope they're gonna extend it because our estimate is probably 50% of the buildings were not tested yet.
Okay.
So I think city will have to face it and say, no, it was too much of a demand. To answer your question, right now, because you have to have a paperwork, you have to show that you get that you in compliance with local law 31. Plus, if you find out that you have a lead paint, or example, on your doors, you have to abate it now because now that's my honest advice. Because at some point, if maybe one more example, I just if you have a tenant which is difficult, right? And I'm sure you face some people who have a tendency to call the city. Yeah. You know how this works, right? If they call the city and city comes to your apartment and say, this tenant has right because there's a lead paint on the doors. Now you pretty much in violation of the local law 1. You're probably in violation of local law 31. So now we have the big issue because we have to resolve it. It's gonna cost because you have to get abatement people or city can do it for you. It's gonna be more expensive option. So I would say act quickly.
Yeah, act quickly because what happens? The kid gets sick, goes to the hospital.
Whoa.
Yeah, and they can actually start the case,
You touch one thing, which again...
I don't want to talk about it, but it's a reality,
we have to stop this webinar at some point, but since you kind of you trigger subjects because you said when they get sick, pretty much local law 1, which I mentioned, this was regulation made actually to prevent children from being exposed to lead. It's actually named Childhood Prevention Lead Poisoning Act. This meant, landlords supposed to take care of the lead paints, not to expose children under 6 years old, right? This was true back then. It's still true now, but no, it's kind of extended because if you have if you have a tenant with children at any age, and if any one of them gets sick, they're gonna notify the Department of Health, or a doctor can notify the Department of Health in case of young children. And the Department of Health can get involved in investigation what caused it, right? So they can come for the inspection to your apartment, to your building, say, we have to test all the paints. We found that you have lead paint. So now they can issue violation letter and they will notify HPD. So now you have two agencies involved in this. So again, you ask me when to act now.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So you do the all testing immediately. If you haven't done it, you do it.
You got to do it.
You're gonna save it in the long run, on it. Save your money, And what advice would you give brokers like me to better protect their clients,
Yeah, awareness, because pretty much you have no other way than follow requirements, right?
Yes.
Because we say, okay, let's not talk about the lead. You have to talk about the lead.
Yeah.
I think in your paperwork there's actually requirement for this. Right? You asked me a question about asbestos. No, it's actually not mandatory to do asbestos test because you may have asbestos in the drywall or plaster wall. But if you sell the building and the buyer plans renovation, right, and they want to apply for the construction permit, the first question they will get from the Department of Building or requirement, please provide the asbestos report.
Yeah.
And now they say, okay, so they're gonna hire somebody like me who is licensed like myself, and I say, okay, what is your construction scope of work? And they're gonna tell me, we want to renovate, we want to gut them on this building, and we kind of know we want to upgrade it. So I say, no, pretty much every material here, which is asbestos suspect material, has to be tested now. So I have to go there. And now, what if I find that plaster contains asbestos? That's like, and they say what? Well, now you have to abate the whole plaster in the whole building, and abatements are expensive. It's not like a gut demo by construction, by demolition contractor. You have to hire somebody. It's probably going to cost you twice as much, or maybe 3 times as much. So if you sell a building and you sell a building with asbestos, and somebody buys this and they plan renovation or big construction, well, now they have a big cost to abate it. Right?
Yeah, because they have to. If they hire architect,
Right.
there's one of the procedures they have to do. You know, because they won't be able to do any work.
Correct. Well, pretty much when they apply for the construction permit.
When they apply for the construction permit.
Then they would have, actually, request for the asbestos.
For the asbestos report.
Another, advice which I can give, if you have a building and there's most of these buildings have, old roofs, and the roofs actually are built up because repair, looks like, they add new layer.
Yeah, they put in. I've seen it a lot of times.
Oh, I see like foot
Really?
high, yeah.
Wow.
But at some point you have to replace it, right? And now if you apply, well, you have to apply for the construction permit for it, because if you replace if you renovate the roof, there's no requirement. But if you do any structural work on the roof, or you have to replace the whole roof, this would require a construction permit. Or even if you don't, you still have to test it, because if you're gonna be stopped by the DOB doing the roof abatement or roof renovation, you have to provide asbestos survey. So if you sell a building or you buy the building with the asbestos in the roof, at some point it's gonna cost you probably 20-30 grand, to abate it. I'm talking a building like this, right? Not like a big building, but just average building. So this has to be added to the cost of the.
So usually all owners, or even if not planning to sell it but keep it, you should do work. You should contact Peter, on it in a 5-star environmental. Where are you located? You're in Maspeth, right?
No, actually, we moved to Howard Beach.
You're in Howard Beach. Yeah.
It took me only 25 minutes to get here this morning, so I was like, "Oh, I'm not far away."
Yeah, but your office is in Howard Beach. Howard Beach.
Yeah,
okay.
It used to be right here in Ridgewood.
Right here in Ridgewood, and what's your? You can tell the listeners what's the best number to contact you.
Yeah, absolutely. I can. It's 718-971-91. Again, my name is Peter. So if you call this number, most of the time I'll pick it up. Or
you're gonna see your information down below on it,
right.
of Peter. But I think at this point, any other thoughts you would like to share? Any crazy cases, testing maybe you've done?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of crazy cases which we go through, especially with the construction, when the contractors do some work. And the Department of Building pretty much travels the city, and they observe if they see any construction and look for the construction permit. Some construction goes without a permit because they claim it's only renovation or repair work. If they can get away with this, that's good. But still city inspectors may visit, right? And if they see some suspect material, let's say they see plaster. I'm talking about plaster because everybody's surprised. What, plaster? Yeah, plaster is suspect material. Asbestos suspect material. So if they see plaster disturbed, they say, "Do you have test for it?" If you don't have it, they're gonna issue work stop order.
Really?
That's a big mess, right? Big mess now, because now you have everything's on hold, and now you have to apply for the paperwork and do tests, So I would say if you plan construction, get inspections for the lead paint and for asbestos materials that you may disturb. Yeah.
Okay.
That's very important.
So then you will know if you have to capsulate, right? If you do the testing.
Right.
Yeah,
well, let's say, you say you want to renovate this studio, right?
Sure.
Studio apartment, let's say, right? And you say, Peter, please provide me an asbestos test. I provide the test. I say, Mark, you know what? This wall, my favorite wall, contains asbestos. Maybe you'll plan your construction without disturbing it. Let's say you're going to leave this wall, you're going to rearrange the whole thing, right? So you have an option not to do it. Don't disturb it, protect it, and there's going to be low-cost approach, right? But if you say, no, I have to remove this wall because we want to extend this room, then I say, no, you have to contact a abatement contractor, and they have to remove it for you. So that's a legal aspect of it. If you don't do it, again, it's illegal, very unhealthy, and people become very aware these days in New York City. Very often we are called for like a job site because somebody complained to the city, and they say, no, you have to come because we did some disturbance. We don't know what's going on. Test it now, right? So that's the thing.
Yeah, that's the great information, Peter. Great to have you as a guest, and I really appreciate your time and sharing some knowledge. It's not simple stuff what you do. It's very detail oriented. A lot of testing. And I thank you actually for joining us today on our show, Peter.
My pleasure. Anytime. I'm glad to provide this. And pretty much we usually consult our clients for free. So that's you can tell I like it.
Yeah, awesome, great. Thank you, Peter, and I hope to see you on the different shows on it.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Bye bye.